This is just a PowerPoint.
Okay.
I have another type of PowerPoint presentation that's like very. Okay. So. Okay, so this is what I was thinking. Our course goes from September 11th to April 2nd. Why is that? Because April, there's the holidays and everything, it's Pesach, and so it turns out all April we won't be learning. So there's like two classes or so in May, so I just kind of ended it April 2nd. So that comes to around 24 or so classes. So if we can do the first 3 chapters of Pirkei Avot have a total of 62 chapters. The first 4 have 91. So if we do around 2 or 3 per class, we're able to finish half of Pirkei Avos. I think that's cool. That's a good goal.
First 3 chapters have a total of 62 chapters.
Yeah,
First, Mishnahs, that should be Mishnahs. Yeah, Mishnahs. Correct, I have to correct that. Good catch. All right,
wow.
so, and then if we do well and we enjoy it, we can try to finish it, go to the next half next year. Yeah, Brenda. Yes.
Is it possible to give us a little more time for reading?
Oh, thank you.
Oh, yeah, I didn't give you a lot of time. Yeah, I'm happy to. I'm very happy to. Once you hear, this is easy because I kind of know the length of it, so. Good call. So those are the breadth goals. The depth goals are, so I'm kind of, we had a really good Shavuot learning experience this year. It was just like, maybe 15 of us stayed up all night and learned together. And we really like, I don't know, they bounced ideas off of each other, really kind of dug deep. So that's the digging in. I like to be able to do that. It's a little bit different than our other classes in the sense that some more frontal stuff last year. This is a text that we can all hold and we can all kind of really get deep into it. So I'm hoping we'll do that together. And it's called Chapters of the Fathers, perhaps because there's like multiple voices that we can all bring into it. So hopefully we'll do that. That's my goal in that sense. So again, it's a little frontal part because I want to give you an introduction to Pirkei Avot. There's 5 stages of the evolution of Jewish law. Okay, what is this? Besides me writing this book, like what is Pirkei Avot? How does it fit into our tradition? Like where do these sayings come from? What time period were they stated? So there's 5 stages in evolution of Jewish law. The Bible, yeah, it's 24 books of the Tanakh, 613 commandments. The Mishnah, Pirkei Avot is a book in the Mishnah. So that it was sealed in 200 CE, around 200 CE, by Rabbi Yehuda Nasi. Basically, he took all these teachings that were being discussed in among the rabbis. At that time, they couldn't write any of the teachings down. Why? Because we're going to talk about it. But if you there was a law in place, the oral tradition can't be written down, and the written tradition can't be said out loud without reading it from a book. That was tradition. The oral tradition couldn't be written down because they were afraid that if you wrote it down, it would become ossified and stuck in the past. That's why when you get, I'll give you an example. You look at me. That's the look I get when I teach high school. When I open up a Gemara, Baba Kama with high school, it's like, I don't own an ox. I don't own a cow. Why are you talking about these weird topics? The tradition, if you just have it stuck in the examples of the past, it can feel not alive. So the rabbis never wanted that to happen. They wanted the principles to be taught in every generation. And then in our generation, people will be talking about if your car hit my car, if you're carrying your iPad through the high school and it falls and someone walks on it, who has to pay the damages? Meaning, if it's stuck in the examples, people think it's not relevant. So we have to keep the principles alive and always keep applying it differently in every generation. That's one of the reasons why they didn't want that. Also, they wanted consistently to like have tradition be developed and for parents to teach their children. It's in a book like today. I don't have to look it up. It's on the internet. I don't have to remember things. Or I could just do ChatGPT. You know what I'm saying? So they wanted people to continuously give over the tradition throughout generations. At a certain point, we were afraid that we're going to lose the tradition, so they wrote it down. But that was a big break from the way it was. It was the rabbis used to teach and sit. The students just sit at the rabbi's feet, and they used to teach them. And the traditions were memorized and then delivered to the next generation. But at a certain point, they wrote it down. The writing down of traditions for the first time was in the Mishnah. The Gemara, the Talmud, which is the next stage, is expansions on the Mishnah. It was writing down the teachings of the rabbis who were discussing the Mishnah. That's the Gemara. That's the Talmud. Okay, so whoa, a lot going on over there.
Sorry about that.
Pick up the popcorn.
I'm doing that.
Okay, so that's very important. So Pirkei Avot is one of the first recordings of our tradition. Now, what's unique about Pirkei Avot, which we're going to talk about in a moment, is that it's not the law, the discussions around the laws. It's ethical statements. And so it's a recording of the main ethical statements of the rabbis of those generations. So it was written down 2,000 years ago, and we're studying it now, and we're going to try to understand it from a modern perspective and try to see how it's relevant for us today. So that's like a little bit, and then you have the Rambam's Mishnah Torah, and then the Shulchan Aruch. Those are like later, not as relevant for us today, but those are the stages of the tradition being written down. So.
I was just reading the bottom with this.
Okay. Oh. Here.
There it is. Shulchan Aruch, that's what I want to see.
You done reading?
Okay.
Okay. No questions. Just wanted to read it. Okay. Okay, so in the Mishnah, there are 6 parts of the Mishnah. How do I know that? From the Haggadah. No, I know that from Yeshiva, but the Haggadah says, at the end of the Haggadah, we say this, the 6 books of the Mishnah. The Mishnah has 6 books. Within those 6 books, there are subsections, okay? So this is, here are the subsections within each book of the Mishnah. The first book is about seeds, it is about agriculture. The next one is about holidays. The next one is about laws connected to women. The next one is laws connected to damages, and it's not intentional that the women came before the damages. It's not, anyway. And then we have holiness and then purity. So within the section of damages, we have Pirkei Avot. Okay, why? Why would Pirkei Avot ethical messages be in the section connected to damages, property law, all that stuff? Anyone have a thought on that?
I guess it makes sense because if you have to decide if it's ethical to pay damages or if you're responsible for damages.
Yeah, so you need judges to help you figure that out. You need guidelines. The book of, some say that the Mishnahs of Avot are guidelines for the judges to know how to act with the people who are in their court. Also, if you're a good person, you get along with others, you won't really need the damages. So it's kind of like a tikkun or a repair for that. How you doing on Zoom? Good? All right, cool. All right, let's keep going here. Okay, so here's in actuality what the 6 books of the Mishnah look like. You have this translation into English, which is really nice if you're looking for one. And this is 6 and this is the Hebrew, which is basically like it's standing up or whatever, but here's all the Mishnahs with some Hebrew translation. I'm just trying to show you, it's a lot of material. Pirkei Avot is, sorry, you're getting dizzy?
Okay.
Pirkei Avot is one of maybe, I don't know how many are here. And it's the only one that deals with ethical laws. All right, so here's some guiding principles for what we're going to be doing. Okay, down here is a tweet. Okay, this is back when people tweeted. Remember, now they're just Xing. So, so a tweet back in the day used to have how many 40 characters? 140. So this is 38 characters, but 38 letters. So Pirkei Avot can be understood as tweets. I'm not joking when I say that. They are a concise, very concise way of expressing a rabbi's main central teaching, ethical teaching. Like it's really condensed. That's why there's so much commentary on it. because everybody's trying to expand what was condensed, try to figure out what they're saying. So, and they're very short. They're kind of like tweets. Okay, not not like in a kitschy way. I'm saying like they're a way of summarizing a view in a very short section. Now, our guiding principles for how we're going to learn, things we're thinking about is each Mishnah has one teaching from a rabbi. And so it's understood, Hu Haya Omer, they open up. They would say, that comes to teach us that this teaching is one of their central teachings. Okay, so we just have to know, like, this is like very important teaching. So one of their central ethical teachings. So in my book and all in our class, we're going to try to follow the Maharal's direction, which is if a rabbi teaches 3 things in a Mishnah, we're going to try to see how they're connected. Okay, the rabbi says, be patient in judgment, make a fence, and teach many students. How are all 3 of those teachings connected? The Maharal likes to do that. See, like perhaps there's a thread that goes between them. Perhaps not, but many times we want to assume that there is some sort of connection, and we're going to try to seek that out. Okay, yeah.
Say something about the Maharal.
The Maharal lived in I guess like the 15th century, 16th century. He was a mystic, and he also was a halachist, and he wrote a lot of texts. He wrote a commentary to Pirkei Avot, and his thinking was like a very type of unifying thinking. So he has commentary on Pirkei Avot, and so like he's always connecting things. So he's a guide in that sense. So another thing is you might learn a Mishnah and be like, wait, this doesn't pair up with a Mishnah in chapter 3. That's okay. They're different rabbis. So it's not like one fluid work where it's like somebody sat and took all the words of the rabbis and put a book together and tried to arrange them so they all align with each other. They're different opinions. One rabbi's main ethical directive may be this, and another one could be opposite. So if they don't always fit, it's not the end of the world. We try to see how we can make them fit. But another thing is I like to try to be open with interpretation. Like we can unpack the Mishnahs together. Try to figure out what's going on there. There are some limits to interpretation. It says Moses received Torah from Sinai in the first Mishnah. We want to try to be connected to that. So you could say, oh, Moses received Torah from Sinai. He received the Torah, but he didn't receive anything else. No, he didn't accept any of the tradition. That's not what it's saying. You can interpret it that way. I'm saying like we're going to try to interpret it within the tradition. Try our best. Okay, so that's a little bit of our guiding principles. This is like a little. This is what we talked about. Things that are writing you shouldn't allow to verbalize. This is like the animals. The Bava Kama opens up speaking about animals goring each other, and kids learn that. That's one of the first Gemaras that they learn. But if the Gemara were to be Talmud and the Gemara are the same word, just Aramaic and Hebrew. If it was written today, it'd probably be talking about this person's, let's say Corvette. That would have been like 20 years ago. This person's Tesla hit that person's, I don't know, Cybertruck. Oh, okay. And it did, and the Cybertruck didn't get damaged because it never gets damaged. Anyway, so another thing we're thinking about is interpretive styles. Okay, so you can read the Mishnah literally. What are they trying to say? Literally. Who are they speaking to? Literally. Okay. In my book and overall, and the rabbis throughout the generations, they like to take it beyond the literal reading. And the understanding is Torah is very rich and it can be interpreted in many different ways. So we can add on different types of interpretations that aren't the literal reading, but they can be meaningful and emerge from the text. I'm always careful to have my text anchored in, there's like 3 approaches. One is literal reading of the text. Another approach is that you don't have to be attached to the text at all. Like Hasidic works, they'll take one word and like they'll go out all over the place. I like to be very creative with the text, but I like to anchor it in the text. So at least you have a reading of the text based on your creative explanation. It's a little bit harder work, but another thing is this should be really here. Historical. This should be really here. Who was the author and when did they speak? So you can explain the Gemara, the Mishnahs that way. Who was this person? Antigonus, Shimon HaTzadik. Who were they? Well, we have information on them. You can go through the Talmud. They have different statements. Go learn their history. Maybe you can explain the Mishnah based on their history. So that's another way of interpreting it. I actually don't do that much. So I'm not really a historian. So I'm more like a philosopher, so I like thoughts more than, but
That book you have on the bottom does it very well.
they do it sometimes. Rabbi Beryl Wine, you're looking for more explanation than that. He does it because he's an historian. All right, deeper meanings. So that's why I like to go deeper into the text. And then there's this intertextual, intertextuality. Anybody heard that before? You have to say that's like a word that makes you sound sophisticated. We're going to be involved in intertextuality. What's that? It's basically just comparing two texts and seeing the interconnection between them. So what I like to do is like Mishnah number 1 talks about the 3 things upon which the world stands. There's another Mishnah later on that's going to talk about 3 things upon which the world exists. So I'm going to try to see if there's a connection between those 2 Mishnahs. That's learning from one source to another and learning something new out of that. You can also do it with the author's sayings. The author might have multiple sayings in Pirkei Avot. You're learning about Hillel. Go see all of Hillel's statements in the Gemara. He has another 50 or whatever, or 20 of them. Compare them and then build an approach based on that. That's like intertextual with other texts of that same author. Then there's overall with traditions, teachings from the broader tradition. You could take this text, compare it far out to other teachings that are similar. Yes, there's a lot of different ways to go. I go basically all these. I'm not so historical in terms of like this person lived under the Roman persecution, and that's why I did that like one time in the book, but I'm not as strong in that. So maybe we can try to think about that together, but I'm not naturally inclined toward that direction.
Quick question.
Yeah.
Were all these rabbis thought to be close to being prophets
No,
in terms of vision, in terms of?
the assumption is like that the rabbis had a level of inspiration, but not prophecy. On Sheikh Knesset Agdola, they had some prophets in them, which was like around that time. But the assumption is the rabbis, number one, were very smart, very connected to tradition. Like they weren't that far from the original tradition, and we assume that they were heavily enmeshed in holiness and like in Torah, and they memorized the Torah. So they were like kind of like a walking Torah. They had inspiration, and so we treat their words like that. Like the earlier the statements that are made, the more holiness oftentimes we will attribute to it, because they were closer to the source, and we weren't around them, so we didn't see if that they might have been human. Also, so one more. So here's just a quick intro to my book. Okay, that was intro to the Mishnah. Was that good? That was clear. A little bit of a feel for what the Mishnah is, where it's situated, the time period. I just think it's a really fascinating thing that we can sit here 2,000 years later and still be finding Pirkei Avot relevant and really inspiring. That's an amazing thing. That's a lot of years. So I just have a little bit for my introduction to the book. I'll do this part actually. As you probably heard or read, this book started during COVID. It's actually started a while before that. I started learning Pirkei Avot with my father back maybe like, I don't know, over 20 years ago or something like that. We learned over Skype. Remember Skype? Yeah. Anyway, so we learned over Skype, and I would like send him source sheets. I have a picture of them in the book, and we go over it together and we learn. And so like I was very interested in Pirkei Avot, and I was like seeing parallels, and it's just like was interesting me. And so like I would think about it a lot, and through time I developed different approaches to like new ideas. And then during COVID, our Posner asked me to write the commentary per day to a Mishnah. So because we couldn't congregate in shul at a certain period, so we wanted something meaningful to send out to the congregants that they could read in memory of their loved one, because we couldn't say Kaddish together because we were not getting together in person. That's how it started. So I could have chose any of the Mishnahs. Remember, we saw like there was like 80 or so. I don't know the exact number of those tractates, but I chose this one. I thought it could be relevant for people. And then I started writing it. Once we got like two chapters in, we came back to shul together, and I was like, I already have 2 chapters of this written. Let me just keep writing it. So I just kept writing it until I finished it. So that's how that book kind of emerged. And this is like this is the ceremony we wrote. We send it to people in the email along with the Mishnah, and we in a Kapitel Tehillim for them to read each day. and they have to get tzedakah. So tzedakah, Tehillim, and also Torah, Tefillah, and Stucca. That's what they did, and we did that in memory of their loved ones. That's how the book started. I'm in the, God willing, eventually I'm hoping to put out another book on the Parshat Shavua. I post on Facebook Dvar Torahs every week, so I'm hoping eventually. I have like 4 or so years of doing that. I'm going to put them together. That could be another book, but we'll see when that happens. Last thing is just like the path of the book. This book is called Ethics of the Soul. The cover is like a path through the forest, right? And it starts kind of with the color, and then it ends in like a traditional, like how the forest actually looks. And so it's like the modern, but it's kind of leading us back to tradition. That's the idea. And it's also like a journey. It's kind of depicts a journey through tradition, my own personal journey. That's the idea of the cover. Paul Miller, anybody knows him, helped me with that. It's pretty good, huh? Anyway, so, and the content, I called it Ethics of the Soul because I very much connect to spiritual teachings, as you probably know. And so it's a lot of spirituality enmeshed in it, but it's also ethics. And there's a lot of modern thinking as well. So it's like a unique blend between modern thinking and spirituality. That's kind of like the general gist of the book. Okay, so those are our introductions. Any questions or thoughts? Okay, anybody on Zoom? Okay, Steve, thanks for the clap. All right. All right, so let's start learning for Canvas. Okay. So everybody have a book you have at home? Oh, I can project also this on the screen.
Yeah, it's just cool.
All right. Shalom, you came just in time. Yeah, we're actually just starting now. Is that gonna, you're just on time. That's like uncomfortable. Here we go. Let's do it. You ready? We're actually starting right now. All right. So the first Mishnah. Okay. Above always is the. Is this being shared with you guys at home? I don't think so. Let me share it. Okay. Here's the first Mishnah. Moshe kibel Torah misina. U'misra li Yeshua v'Yeshua l'skenim l'skenim l'neviim l'neviim l'sra l'anshei knesset gedolah. Okay, Moshe received the Torah at Lily from Sinai and transmitted it to Yeshua. Yeshua to the elders to the prophets to the men of the Great Assembly. So that's like the stages of transmission. Okay, Pirkei Avot is about transmission. It's transmitting lessons and messages, and we're trying to connect to that. It's interesting. It opens with that. Something to think about, I guess. I think a thought that could be connected to that is like it opens with the fact that we're like seeking out tradition here. We're not just like they're not just staying in their own opinions. They're all these opinions are like rooted in tradition. So it's emerging from that. So they said 3 things: be patient in justice, raise up many disciples, and make a fence around the Torah. So here's my question for you: what's the simple explanation of this? Now, my explanation there is not the simple one. What's the simple? It's a simple reading of this. What is it saying? Like, who is it speaking to? We're on page. What page is it? 13. Yeah.
When it says guard Torah,
Yeah.
it's like guarding oneself.
Make a fence around the Torah, right?
Yeah.
Make it so it's
You
like
know, if you're walking down the street and there's something to the left and you might want to look at it, go to the other side of the street, walk that way. Guard your eyes, guard your Torah, guard what is holy to you.
so. So let me challenge you a little bit. Can you see a connection between that and the other 2 statements?
Don't make mistakes. So you gotta be patient with your justice.
Okay. Be patient in the administration. Okay. Be patient with mistakes, okay, and then what's the next one?
Spread the knowledge.
Spread the knowledge. Of what? Which knowledge? Just all,
Coming from the Torah.
what?
Coming from the Torah. Knowledge coming from the Torah down.
So how's that connected to the other statements? It doesn't have to be, but I like to assume that there's an interconnection.
Teach people when they make their mistakes, how they could do better.
So be patient with others, with yourself, with mistakes. Raise up many disciples and protect yourself.
It's saying be patient and just
So th-
reminding us to be careful when we judge.
Correct.
People, situations, whatever.
So the simple reading of this, and 1 second, this is Janet, the simple reading is that it's talking to judges. Pirkei Avot is situated in the book of damages. So it's saying to judges, here is some guidance for you. Be patient in justice. Why should you be patient as a judge in administrating justice?
Hear all the facts, don't make a quick
Yeah,
decision.
don't make a quick decision. Sometimes when you're a little bit slower, people can, by the way, if you want snacks, whatever, there's some stuff here. So if people can come to an agreement on their own, like if you give some space for people in justice, go a little bit slower, there's a lot of benefits when it comes to that. And it's telling them also to teach many disciples and to make a fence around the Torah. Like we want many judges.
According to your translation, it's raised up many disciples.
Well, the literal word is ha'amidu.
Oh,
So you could say it's to teach, it could be to develop, it could be to raise up. It's not clear exactly. That's why Pirkei Avot is a tweet. You get a tweet and you have to figure out what they're saying. So if anybody knows the Hebrew and they want to give a stab at it to understand like the ha'amidu tamidim harbeh and make a fence around the Torah. So the judges are asked when they're administrating justice and they're establishing the law that they should be careful to protect the Torah. Like when they're establishing laws connected to Shabbat or whatever, make laws that will protect the Torah. For instance, there's laws connected to muktzah that you can't move certain things in Shabbat because we're afraid that you might come and use it. Okay, so that's an example, like electricity or whatever. So those would be like guidance for the judges in that respect. You're gonna say something, Jenny? Yeah.
But it's also, I think, saying, no matter what decision you make sure it's within the fence of the Torah. It
Yeah.
relates back.
So don't just protect the Torah, make sure you're within the fence of the Torah. So pass a judgment. I still don't know what the connection between that and the students is, but
Well, what about, it could be saying that the people will know.
Can you hear, by the way, at home? Can you hear at home? But when people are sharing? Okay, good.
Maybe the deciding part is people learn from the judges and therefore they get to the point where they won't be making the mistakes that will lead them to judges. So it would enrich the people's knowledge and lives. So that's where we get the disciples.
Meaning if they're setting a good example, they'll
learn from their mistakes. And then they themselves might eventually become judges or help other people before we even need to have the judges.
meaning if they're, so you explain,
They'll live their life such that there won't be damages, there won't need to be judges. They'll know what the right thing to do.
that's,
I guess, Sherry,
I guess I see it as you're raising up many disciples, so you're cultivating judges. And you need to make sure that your judges are working within the context. And that you're training people who are knowledgeable and patient in how they use what you're giving them.
So these are some tools for them. This raising up many disciples is really like the topic. And how you do that through being deliberate and also through making a fence to Torah, to do it from within tradition. That's an interesting interpretation. Let's do, let me just see if anybody on Zoom want to chime in? Steve, you awake? Okay, good.
I think that the raise up many disciples or right, raise.
Stand up
is-
literally.
Stand up, yeah, is to, that the judges through their patience and guidance set the example that will raise those who will learn to do the thing and not run to judge themselves, and all within the guidelines of the Torah.
That's a good interpretation, yeah. I'm gonna share with mine in a moment, but
I just wanna retrace one, say, I don't understand when it says most receives and transmitted. Is this all done orally? So transmitted to Joshua, Joshua to the other, the other. Fine. You heard the game telephone, so by the time it got to the prophet.
that was why we have the Mishnah.
Right, but the Mishnah came later.
Yeah.
This is saying that all this transpired orally.
Yeah.
And by the time it gets to the prophets, the men of the Great Assembly, boom, it's already been transpired all.
So you're
the
asking a big
information.
question connected to transmission overall.
The Mishnah is completely different than the original
Mm.
Torah received at Sinai.
So there's a midrash like that, where I think we learned that last year, or it was Stories of the Sages. That was like the very beginning of the year.
See? I
Uh,
mean, completely different.
yeah, we don't even remember that. No, but like we learned with Rabbi Akiva, where Rabbi Akiva wanted to see, no, Moshe wanted to see like what the Torah is going to be like in the future, and he went and God sent him to the future to go sit in Rabbi Akiva's class. He had no clue what was going on in there. And then the student, and he was confused. He was seated all the way in like the 8th row, and Rabbi Akiva was teaching, and a student asked, and Moshe was perplexed, and Rabbi Akiva, a student asked Rabbi Akiva, "Where'd you get this from?" He says, "It's a halacha to Moshe from Sinai." And Moshe was there. He's like, "What?" But the idea is that it might the details might change, but the principles, the core principles, Moshe might didn't understand the application, but he was comforted to know that his principles are being transferred and applied in later generations. So
But you can understand.
I agree with you. That's the danger of orally transmitting the Torah. At a certain point, it was getting corrupt. That's why they wrote it down. Yeah.
But that part, maybe is.
Also-
totally different.
Well, yeah. Okay, so let me share with you a thought on this text. So I think I have a way to connect all the pieces. So the first piece opens with Moshe. I didn't go as deep into this in my book, but it's like a stage 2. So it starts out with Moshe receiving. Moshe receives. Now, in the text I talk about, Moshe received from Sinai, literally, not from God, but from Sinai, right? Moshe kibel Torah mi Sinai, from Sinai. So it doesn't say Bes Sinai, it says mi Sinai. So there has to be something going on there between him and Sinai. So I saw some interpretations talking about like how Moshe, when he received the Torah, he was like Sinai. What does that mean? Sinai was one of the lower mountains, and God chose to give the Torah on Sinai to hint to us that for us to receive the Torah, we have to humble ourselves. So I think this Mishnah is guidance for rabbis. They want to see the next generation succeed. You have to humble yourself, like Moshe. It says Moshe received it, and then he transmitted. Others transmitted it. Moshe had this certain humility. So it opens up with that, and then it gives you 3 directions. So be patient in judgment. Okay, so it's very tempting to. So this is very tempting when you have students to like be impatient with them. They might be going off the right path, or they may not be following your direction. But if a rabbi is able to give a student space to develop their own thought, to think for themselves, to develop their own path, and the rabbi is there obviously to guide them and to help them. But the rabbi offers space. They're slow in judgment, like they're careful. They give space. Through that, they can actually develop a student and help a student think for themselves. So that's the second part. Ha'amidu tamidim harbeh. Once the rabbi is able to kind of give the student space, and not just enforce their view on the student, but rather kind of help them develop their own approach, at that point, the student will be able to stand up. There are different views of how rabbi-student Talmud relationship should be, should go forth. One approach is like The rabbi just tells the student, or the teacher just tells the student what to think, they take it in and they follow that. I think this mission is not saying that. I think this mission is saying, don't do that, like hold back from some of that sometimes. Allow them space, they might think differently than you. That's okay, as long as they're within the bounds of the Torah and you can guide them in developing their own view, that can enable them to stand on their feet. And I think that's what the next part's talking about. It's talking about make a fence around the Torah. That's going to, a fence has different purposes. A fence can protect, a fence can keep things in. So I think that that's a way that you can protect the Torah, that you can keep the Torah for the next generation, is through enabling individuals who are learning Torah to connect the Torah from a real authentic place. If they connect the Torah from a real authentic place, hopefully, God willing, they'll keep the Torah later on. That will make a fence for the Torah. I think that's how you can connect the three ideas. This idea of giving space, be deliberate in judgment, help enable your students to stand up on their own 2 feet, and then through that, you can protect the Torah and keep it in place. When I was in yeshiva, I had 2 different types of rabbis. I had this one rabbi who was very, very tough. Maybe I needed both of them at the time. I don't know. I had this one rabbi who, in the beginning when I got to yeshiva, I was like, you get out of high school, you're just messing around, you like would knock on my door, be like, Eli, you're coming to daven, you're coming to pray. So at a certain point, I found alternate routes through the yeshiva, so I went up to see him at certain. It was a little scary, But I had this other rabbi, who was my main rabbi, and I'm still in touch with him actually, Rabbi Kenny Cohen. Your husband knows him. They learned together. You know him too. So he was very helpful. Like he wanted me to find out who I was and to find out what my thinking was on things. And he asked to hear what I thought. And through that, I felt safe and I could really develop myself in the Torah. And I think that's one of the reasons why I'm still connected to Torah today. That's the fence around the Torah. I'm not falling. We learned in this week's parsha about putting a fence. I'm not going to speak about it again, Robert, but we put a fence around your house. You need a fence around around the top of your house so people don't fall off. It protects people. We don't want people to fall off away from Torah. It's very interesting. Baltimore, I grew up in the religious community in Israel. I don't have that much experience in religious communities in America. So meaning at age 18, I became religious in Israel. But Baltimore is a very interesting community here. There's people who are very frum. There's people in those communities who are very burnt out. It's very dichotomous, that either a certain system, a way of teaching works for people, or it can completely go the opposite way. And I think sometimes there's certain individuals who, if they were given more space and they were given more support, they could still be in Torah today. And so I think this is kind of guiding us to be careful with that. So that's a thought on that, Mishnah. Any thoughts on that? Yeah.
I think you had a bracha that you found yourself a teacher who got you where, today.
Yeah.
You're still in contact with him, that his teaching methodology resonated in a manner that, your rabbi, doctor,
Yeah. So we're careful with that. I bet the Philly, we try to, our system here is we try to give space for people. Sometimes people think we give too much space. I don't know, but anyway, so that's how I understand it. Anybody else want to offer any other thoughts on this Mishnah? I know I kind of now colored your mind in reading it, but you can think creatively and try to give a stab. Yeah.
I've been patient with you doing this.
Yeah, good. Thank you.
That's the justice you need. I think that this is a perfect opening Mishnah for this book, because whether, like Michael says, it gets changed
Right.
a little bit, it still indicates that the tradition, no matter how skewed it is, goes all the way back to Sinai. And that and that we have to understand how deep and far this goes, that this is just not a fly-by-night kind of thing, and that we have to really grab onto it for the beauty of the history of it all.
It's grounded.
Grounded.
What's grounded?
Okay.
Yeah.
Really, that's the reason for showing me the transmission. And I think the cycle is definitely related to transmission. of the, of what the judge, of pertaining to what they're talking, what the rabbis are talking about.
So,
I know, I just, disciples kind of goes with transmission. And
Mhm. transmitted, yeah. I want to show you one more thing on this Mishnah. So here's like an intertextuality thing. So if you, I'm scrolling here, sorry for those who are sensitive to this. So if you turn to Mishnah 1:18. There, sorry for those at home seeing this and it's making them dizzy.
Those courts are the foundation of society.
Yeah, nice. You memorize that?
No, you
Somebody's got a reader.
That's where you said.
Appreciate that. All right, page 49. So
47.
47, okay. Page 47. So very interesting. This Mishnah has on three things does the world stand. Wait. We just saw on three things the world stands, right? On justice, on truth, and on peace. So this is like where you would do an intertextuality thing, like how does this jive with our Mishnah, which says, upon three things the world stands, al Torah, al Avodah, al Gemilu Chasidim, Torah, service, and, oh wait, we didn't get to that yet, did we?
No.
Sorry, we didn't get to that, sorry. All right, never mind, we're gonna get to that. Let's go back. Our Mishnah had three things, but it was three other things. My apologies. All right, so we're about to get to that now. All right, let's go to 1-2. No, it's for this week.
118.
118, that's not next week. I mean, all right, let's do 1-2.
take two.
Sorry at home if this is making you dizzy. All right, let's go. Next Mishnah. Page in the Chumash. Page 15. Shimon HaTzadik Hayam Mishari Knesset Gdola. He was one of the last men of the Great Assembly. He used to say, so what did he say? Like, what was his main thing? What was his tweet? What was, like, you have tweets that you can pin, where like you go on someone's page and it's a pinned tweet. This is like pinned tweet, like it's always there. He used to say, on three things the world stands. Okay, again, we just saw 118, which says three things the world stands. The Torah, the temple service, prayer, and the acts of loving kindness. Al Torah, al Avoda, al Gemilu Chasadim. Those are three central things. Here's my question for you. What like, I guess, how are these similar or different from each other? Like what? Yeah.
Well, especially during Elul, we always, and for Rosh Hashanah, we always look at Torah, Tefillah, and Tzedakah.
Yeah. Tshuva.
That's it. Yeshiva, for loving kindness and prayer and Torah, and that's what your life is supposed to be centered around. That's what we're supposed to be concentrating on this month.
Yeah. So those are three things. These are three important things: prayer, Torah, and it could be parallel press, so tshuva, tefillah, and tzedakah. Prayer, tshuva, and giving tzedakah could be parallel to this in a way. So these three things could be also talking about three realms in which we serve God. Torah is between perhaps us and ourselves, like we're developing our view in Torah. Avoda, which is service, is between us and God. And Gemilu Chasidim is between us and other people. That's one way to understand like why these are the three main things. So I had this little game, I wrote about this in the book. I had this little game that I played where I was wondering where the mitzvot are. We have tshuva, we have Torah, avoda, and Gemilu Chasadim. Where are the mitzvot? They should be in the top three. Torah, mitzvahs, kindness. I don't know why. So I went to I wanted to see what different rabbis would answer. So I went to maybe 10 or so rabbis. Rabbi Aviner, Rabbi Cardozo, one of the rabbis in my yeshiva. I got a lot of different answers connected to that. The central answer was that mitzvahs, when we talk about Torah, it's the same thing. Torah and mitzvahs are like the same thing. But I thought of another answer through time, which is perhaps it's talking here about things that are like spiritual things, high levels of spirituality. So Torah is something that happens in your mind. You can take the Torah with you wherever you are. Mitzvahs, though, are are connected to physicality a lot of the times. So you can only put on tefillin if you have tefillin. You can only eat matzah if you have tefillin, if you have matzah. So, but the Torah is something very elevated and spiritual. So when it's talking about upon what the world stands, it's talking about the most elevated spiritual things. Avoda as well, service as well. Service of God is prayer. It's the most elevated. And I think it's talking Gemilut Chasadim, I agree, it's with your body, but it's a general category of being kind to other people. So I think that's one way to answer that Mishnah, and perhaps teaches us. That's like one idea I have connected to this. It teaches us that like we need both of them. You need the mitzvahs to fix your body, and you need the Torah like to fix your mindset. So that's like one thought I had on this Mishnah. I don't have many deep thoughts on this Mishnah actually. I have like trying to develop a thought connected to comparing it to the other Mishnah, which is 118, which I talked about. There it talks about truth, judgment, and peace as upon which the world stands. If someone wants to help me develop this parallel, how it's connected, I saw someone say, but I don't have deep thoughts on this. I heard someone say, Torah is judgment, avoda is truth. No, sorry, Torah is truth, avoda, service, is judgment, and Gemilut Chasadim is shalom. I don't know. I don't have deep thoughts on that really. That's kind of what I have to say on this Mishnah. Anybody have any other thoughts on this Mishnah? Okay, I'm open to moving on to the next Mishnah. Are you?
Sure.
Okay. Let me see at home. At home, you good? You ready? You want to move on to the next Mishnah? Okay. One more half-baked thought I had on this before we go on. The 118, it talks about truth, it talks about judgment, it talks about peace. So here it has, those are like two pieces, warmth and connection. Judgment and truth are something that don't necessarily connote interconnectivity with people per se. Similarly here you have Torah and Tefillah. You can be heavily involved in Torah and Tefillah. That could be just by yourself, right? But then you have Gemilut Chasadim, which is acts of loving kindness. Perhaps, I don't know, I'm trying to think this through. Perhaps it's trying to say like you have to be heavily enmeshed in spirituality, Torah and Tefillah, but don't forget to be nice. Don't forget to be involved in acts of loving kindness. Yeah.
The first two could be passive. I mean, you could do something, just kind of take it in, but if you don't do something, what are you doing with it?
So I'm saying something similar to that, like a little bit different, but like similar in the sense that like there's things that happen separate from people and things that happen with people. But like also same thing. You can be a person of truth, you can be a person of judgment, but we really need to channel those towards peace among people. If you have just the truth and the judgment by themselves, that's not going to help build society. You can be a person of truth, but there's no connectivity. So and this happens a lot that people go in. I talked about this in different settings, and people go. I think I talked about it in the book. At one point, when I got to Israel, when I did tshuva, I can't get more religious. I was so excited to come close to Judaism, and I was like, I don't know. Anybody ever seen Coming to America? Yeah, James Earl Jones passed away this week. What's his name? King Jaffe. Jaffe. Anyway, so he gets to New York. Remember Eddie Murphy is like, he goes, what was it? Screaming out the window. What was he saying? He's like, to be loved. He's like screaming out his window. He's excited, right? So, and then someone says like, shut up. Like, so like I had experience like that myself when I got to Israel. I was so excited to be in Israel, so excited to be around religious people. Like I grew up, I wasn't always around religious people. And I was so excited to be in the holiness of Jerusalem. I was so excited to be around tshuva, tefillah, and Torah. It was amazing. And so I was walking through like Mea Sharim, like a very ultra Orthodox neighborhood. And like I was really excited. So I was like, hi, how are you doing? I was like, shalom. And then these people and the people just like ignore me. Like they, who is this weirdo? But yeah.
So
Well, let me just finish that thought. So why am I I'm not just telling the story, but I'm telling the story because you can sometimes, I don't think that they should have ignored me like that. Maybe they're busy or whatever, but like, I think that you can be heavily involved in Torah and Tefillah, and that's great. But if you don't have kindness to other people, it's not the full package.
Tell our shoppers at 7 Mile Market when I say good Shabbos on Friday and they look at me like I'm.
No,
I think this is a call to fix our ways. So one more thought, I see one more thought. Connected to this. So, one of my a teaching that I like a lot, I heard the name of Rob Barrel Wine. When you make the blessing over the Haftarah, it says, Sher Bachar b'nevi'im tovim. I'm not gonna sing it, but, so it says, God chose nevi'im tovim. God chose good prophets. Duh, was God gonna choose the worst prophets? Of course, God gonna choose good prophets. So I heard him explain, it's obvious God's gonna choose good prophets. God chose prophets who were good. They had tefillah, they had Torah, but they also were good people. They were kind and nice. And so that's what we're supposed to strive for. I think that's a good way, maybe for the next book. Yeah.
These missions are from 200 CE. So this is just, like 140 years after the destruction of the temple. So if
And
we
some
put.
were said during that time too.
Yeah, oh, okay, so.
And there are recordings,
I guess my question here is, was this said before the Beit HaMikdash was destroyed, or was this said after? I mean, after the Beit HaMikdash, because if it's after, then it has a different kind of meaning that that Shimon the righteous saw that, that.
Let's see, when did he
It
live?
needed to be
Someone want to
reminded.
Google it?
It was still fresh,
When did he live exactly? Someone want to Google it?
okay.
I mean, I can Google it. Let's Google it. She was it's his tomb. What? It's all about his tomb. Okay, that's not helpful. Here. Simon the Just. During the second temple period. So this was before the temple was destroyed. Is that helpful or?
Yeah, I'm just putting it like in perspective that you're gonna compare it to this one in Perach, in the Mishnah 18.
Yeah.
So we'll see when we get there what the dates
yeah.
were. So it could all have to do with what was going on in history, that there's these 3 different ways of.
Yes, that's the historical reading. Correct.
Which you don't do.
No, but I'm open to it. I'm just
Okay.
I'm not always inclined towards, like, I'm not naturally, but like, I appreciate it. So, all right, so what time is it? Oh, okay.
3 minutes, go
So
for
let's
it.
try to think, okay. All right, all right, so I guess we're done. Let me think,
Don't force it. it'll
Wait,
come
aren't we
to you.
gonna get to number 5? The one the women in this group are gonna love?
I'm hoping, I've been trying to avoid that one. All right, so let's yes, let's call it a night for tonight and we'll get back next week. So let's see, 1 second, I'm gonna give the assignment, what we should read. So you did 3, you did 4 and 5 already?
You assigned that.
All right, well, next week, we're not gonna have a half-hour introduction, so we can get through more, God willing. Let's do. So 3, 4, 5, 6. And 7 if you have anything,
3 through 7?
3 through 7, yeah. So that would be up to page 26.
Page 26, you want me to write your note?
Yes, please. Thank you.
Page 26 would be 17 to 26.
Need to say, check again for our first time back for the season.